All right, I got some stats for you today. Philadelphia Eagles are allowing 259 pass yards per game, 28th in the NFL. 107.7 rush yards per game, 13th in the NFL. And 366.3 yards per game. That's 19th in the league. But you know what? These numbers, they don't mean anything. Nada. Squadoosh. Ni chaha. You can just crumble these papers up and you can toss them in the trash can. It don't mean shit. It don't mean jack freaking shit. This Eagles defense, it needs to start getting some respect because it's the time of possession disparity that makes these numbers look bad. But you know what they do get? A plethora of sacks and turnovers. Philly is 29th in the NFL in time of possession, keeping it for 27 minutes and 45 seconds per game. So of course, those yardage totals are going to be inflated when teams have the ball for an extra 5 or so minutes a game. So let's go back to those numbers I relayed in the beginning. 259 pass yards per game, 28th in the league, but 7.6 yards per pass completion. That's 22nd. 107.7 rush yards per game, 13th in the NFL, but 3.9 yards per attempt. That's 9th. And finally, 366.3 yards per game, 19th in the league, but 5.4 yards per play. That's 11th. But it's not really the yardage totals that makes this defense look good. Like I said before, it's the turnovers and the sacks. The Birds are tied for 5th in the NFL in takeaways with 22 and 2nd in the league with 42 sacks. That's pretty good. When Jim Johnson's defensive teams dominated the NFL in the early 2000s, he lived by the same philosophy. His defense, well, they give up yards, but they clamped down on the red zone. They took the ball away, and they put that quarterback on the ground. Now, let's not confuse this defense with Johnson's because, let's face it, those Johnson's ones were elite. They were among the best in Eagles history. This one, it just doesn't get enough respect. Billy Davis, he took a lot of heat early on in his tenure as the Eagles defensive coordinator last season. And it was an ugly first 4 to 8 weeks or so. Remember that Denver game? We all wanted him fired. We all wanted him gone like Juan Castillo. But let's remember, it takes time to build cohesion, especially with a young core and a complicated 3-4 defensive scheme. And that same defense, well, it made strides in the second half of 2013. And it's taken an even bigger leap forward this season. And it's led by a front seven that might be the most underrated in the NFL. Just think about how young this group is too. I mean, Trent Cole, he's the only guy over 30 at 32. I'm not including D'Amico Ryans because he's out for the season, and unfortunately, I don't see our Mufasa playing another down in a Philadelphia uniform after his Achilles tear. But what can I say? I love Cox. Mwah, 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 mwah. I mean, I love it. I love it. Gobble, gobble. I mean, I love Cox. Yummy, yummy, yumskis. And of course, I'm talking about Fletcher Cox. He's been one of 2 guys that have really shined this season. Connor Barwin is the other. Before the season, I stated that going into his 3rd year, that Cox would have to take that next leap forward and enter that elite category. And that he has. He shined late in his rookie season in Jim Washburn's system. Took a little while to grasp Davis's concepts last season. But right now, there aren't too many 3-4 defensive linemen in the league that are better. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Pro Football Focus, but according to the website, Cox is ranked 4th out of the 3-4 defensive ends. But don't be fooled by the numbers. Cox, he has 3 sacks in his last 4 games, which is his season total. He's only got 3 sacks on the year. But the sack totals, they hardly tell the story. Cox is in a defensive scheme which isn't designed for him to post those high sack totals. He plays in a 2-gap role. Basically, that means he's responsible for gaps on both sides of the blocker. The man simply collapses the pocket. His 26 hurries are 3rd most of any player at his position. The hurries, they force the quarterback to move, and it makes it easier for the edge rushers to get sacks. And he's a monster in the run game, consistently stuffing the middle. He has 4 tackles for loss in the last 4 games as well. So yeah, you simply can't look at his stats when you judge him as a player. He takes up space, he stands his ground, he fills his gaps, and he takes on blockers. Barwin is a guy that can do a little bit of everything. He can come after the quarterback, he bats balls down at the line of scrimmage, he sets the edge very, very well, and he can drop back in coverage. It's not exactly his strength, dropping back. We saw him get burned by Arian Foster on a wheel route earlier this year. But other than that, he's been fine. I have no problem with his pass coverage skills. With 12.5 sacks, Barwin is second in the NFL behind Justin Houston, who has 14. Michael Kendricks. Oh, he's a star in the making at inside linebacker. His speed allows him to go sideline to sideline very well, and he's at his best blitzing in the A-gap. He has great timing, and he uses his quickness to explode through the gap and get to the quarterback. Remember when Eagles fans were complaining that they took Brandon Graham with the 13th overall pick of the 2010 NFL Draft, and then Jason Pierre-Paul went to the Giants 2 slots later? Well, since the start of the 2012 season, Graham has 14 sacks. JPP has 12. Yeah, that's just some simple math that I think even JPP can understand. Graham has been playing well the last 3 years, but he's finally getting that recognition. He's taken even more stride step forward this season, especially in his pass coverage. Vinny Curry's success in the previous preseasons is translating to the regular year. He has 7 sacks on the season. Let's also talk about those nose tackles up front. Benny Logan, he might be the most underrated guy on this defense this year. He consistently stops the run. And I haven't seen too many people push rookie Bo Allen back this year either. And let's not forget about Cedric the Non-Entertainer, Thornton. He's another guy who's adept at stopping the run. Lastly, there's the veteran of the group, Trent Cole. He took a while to get going last season, trying to figure out how to play a completely new position. He was always, a 4-3 defensive end, putting his head on the ground. Now he's a 3-4 outside linebacker, and he's standing upright. But he figured out everything in the second half of last year. He posted 8 sacks in his last 8 games, and he's got 6.5 of them this season. And he's ranked in the top 10 of the Pro Football Focus 3-4 outside linebackers. Now, when this front 7 plays the way it can, it masks the deficiencies of the secondary. It's that simple. And in terms of stopping the run, they've allowed just a single 100-yard rusher this season. So yeah, this defense, it deserves a lot more respect. I never would have thought that this unit would blossom so quickly under Billy Davis. But what can I say? He's been absolutely outstanding. Outstanding. That's it for today. Make sure you follow us on Twitter @TheBitterBirds. We'll have our Seahawks preview on Thursday. Make sure you check back in for that. Have a great day, guys. Later. Man, I stumbled there in the last couple lines. I didn't stumble at the other ones, though. Respect the D. All right? Respect it. Later.